Revealed, 7 Sinister Campground secrets that haunt the woods. Terrifying true stories exposed. The Johnson family was buzzing with excitement as they piled into their SUV, bound for Whispering Pines Campground. Mark, the dad and a software engineer, couldn't contain his thrill. "This weekend's going to be amazing. Just us, the stars, and the great outdoors," he beamed. Linda, a nurse, tried to match his enthusiasm. Their kids, 10-year-old Ella and 7-year-old Jake, were glued to their tablets, blissfully unaware of the campground's chilling reputation. Hushed whispers about strange happenings and missing campers. They arrived just as the twilight deepened, an eerie glow saturating the tall trees that surrounded them. An unsettling stillness settled over the campsite, yet Mark pushed forward with their tent. As they set up, he shared tales from his childhood of camping trips filled with laughter and adventure. He was naive to the unspoken history that clung to Whispering Pines like morning fog. Once the tent was up, they lit a fire, letting the warmth envelop them as darkness wrapped around the woods. That's when a local park ranger wandered over. He wore a friendly grin, spinning tales about the legends of the forest, his laughter ringing out among the crackling of firewood. Exciting, at first, but then the warmth twisted into a chill. As night deepened, silence wrapped tightly around them, broken only by distant, unidentifiable whispers. It felt like the woods were alive. Mark shrugged it off, claiming it was just an owl, but Linda shivered, her instinct gnawing at her. Ella moved closer to Jake, whispering her thoughts, but everything felt wrong. Shadows flickered just outside their firelight, sending a sting of fear through them. "Let us go for a nighttime hike," Mark suggested, his adventurous spirit deflecting any concerns. Armed with flashlights, they ventured deeper into the forest, though apprehension danced in their hearts. Strange noises echoed, limbs snapped underfoot, and excitement was tinged with dread. They stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin, draped with vines like a torn veil. Mark, intrigued, led the way inside, the heavy door creaking ominously. Dust motes swirled in their flashlight beams, revealing remnants of past campers, an old backpack, fading photographs, and an eerie note that sent a jolt through them: "They're coming for us. Run." Laughter faded as they exchanged wide-eyed glances. Panic bloomed as they headed back, and an intense figure emerged from the shadows, a local hunter, hardened and urgent. "You kids need to leave this place." His voice bore a weight that sent a chill through Mark. "There's something out there hunting families." The ranger's pleasant stories now echoed mockingly in their minds as they realized the danger lurking in the woods. Back at the tent, what once felt safe now bore a heavy atmosphere. Whispers hovered in the dark, and Ella shared her fears with Jake. Linda felt eyes watching, her heart racing. As Mark stepped out to investigate an unsettling sound, his flashlight caught shadows, dull and unwelcoming. Reality twisted, and confusion reigned. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Mark squinted into the darkness as the flickering light revealed a familiar figure that made his stomach drop. The woods whispered again, but this time with a sinister certainty. The night was alive with danger, and they were not just campers in the wild, they were prey. Their weekend escape, now a fight for survival, pivoted into a harrowing truth. As the sinister shadows closed in, the Johnsons stood on the brink of a terrifying revelation, questioning if they would see dawn's light again. Mark felt his heart pound against his ribs, a primal instinct to flee clawing through him. The dark figure ahead emitted a sense of danger that chilled him further than the night air. Stiffening, he quickly scanned the surroundings behind him for Linda and the kids, fingers tightening around his flashlight like a lifeline. "Mark! Come back. Linda's voice broke through the unsettling quiet, laced with panic. In the distance, the flicker of their campfire, a beacon of safety, felt like worlds away. Stay put. Mark shouted, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. But dread beat against his skull. The woods didn't feel safe anymore. As the figure stepped into the flashlight's beam, broader and taller than any man should be, its hollow eyes gazed right through him. Mark's blood ran cold. It was just a hunter, wasn't he it? Run! The hunter barked, jerking his thumb in the opposite direction. They're coming. Now! The urgency in the man's tone left no room for argument. Fear ignited Mark's instinct for survival. He turned back toward the tent, adrenaline surging. But the darkness behind him seemed to stretch, shifting shadows gliding in and out of sight, ever watchful. Panic clawed at Linda's throat as she stood by the fire, pulling Ella and Jake close. "What's happening?" she demanded, eyes darting toward Mark. "There's something out there," he said, breathless. "We have to pack up. Now." As they scrambled to gather their things, the whispers returned closer now, almost a guttural growl. Ella clung to Jake, and he squeezed her hand, wide-eyed with fear. Overhead, the wind howled, the branches creaking ominously. The once comforting trees now seemed to loom over them like hungry giants. With shaking hands, Mark struggled with the tent pegs, the night swallowing their voices as unease wrapped around them. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed in the distance, the sound of something large crashing through underbrush. "Mark!" Linda cried out. Before he could respond, the hunter burst back into view, his worn face grim. "We don't have time. They know you're here." Mark's heart raced as he finished packing. "Who knows we're here?" But the hunter was already glancing over his shoulder, eyes bulging with frantic urgency. "The woods, they're alive. You need to move." Without waiting for a response, he dashed into the darkness, disappearing like smoke. "Should we follow him?" Ella asked, her voice quivering. "No way. We're not going after him," Mark insisted, keeping his voice steady for the kid's sake. But terror coursed through him. As they zipped up the bags and extinguished the fire, dread twisted in Mark's stomach. The air thickened with an unseen weight, an instinct urging them to flee. They stepped into the woods, their flashlights cutting through the encroaching darkness. "Stay close," Linda whispered. They followed the faint trail, the whispers growing louder, teeming with malicious intent. Shadows danced just beyond the edges of their light, slinking closer. "Mark, look!" Jake exclaimed suddenly, pointing ahead. A pair of glowing eyes watched them from the trees, locked onto their every move. Frozen in place, Mark felt the panic grip him like icy hands. He had to act. They were not just hunters in these woods, they were the hunted. "Run!" he yelled, propelling them forward, their breaths heavy with fear. They broke into a run, hearts racing as the shadows followed, weaving in and out of the beam of light, a relentless pursuit. With every step, Mark fought to believe they'd escape, but the sense of something darker lurked close, the whispers growing into a chilling cacophony. What were they running from? As they pushed deeper into the forest, an unnatural silence fell, smothering the chaos. The shadows disappeared, and the woods stood still, hanging in an eerie balance. Had they escaped, or were they entering the trap? The question lingered heavy in the air, thick with tension. And then, it struck. An unearthly scream pierced the silence, echoing through the trees. "Go! Go! Go!" Mark screamed again, as the true nightmare began to unfold before them. Mark's feet pounded against the leaf-strewn ground, the cold earth threatening to swallow them whole. Each desperate gasp for breath felt constricted in his chest, a tightening grip of panic. The scream faded, but the haunting echo lingered, twisting through his mind as they charged deeper into the forest. "Where are we going?" Linda pleaded, her voice trembling like a warning bell. "I don't know." Just away. Mark replied, his heart racing. Shadows shifted, dancing along the edges of their flashlight beams like wraiths hungry for prey. They skirted around the trees, living sentinels obscured in darkness, stretching impossibly high above them. Mark's mind raced as frantic thoughts collided. Where was the hunter? Should they have followed him? But before he could sink too deep into a whirlpool of what-ifs, a flash of movement caught his eye. "Did you see that?" Jake whispered, eyes wide, terror-stricken. Mark turned, trying to pierce the dark, but all he saw was indistinct shapes lurking just beyond the light, waiting, watching. The air felt charged, alive with something they couldn't see. "Keep moving," he urged, gripping Linda's shoulder. They forged ahead, their footsteps a frenzied rhythm against the ominous symphony of the shaking leaves. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered, sputtering out for a moment. In that heartbeat of darkness, something cold clamored against Mark's spine, the absence of light igniting an insidious fear. Instinctively, he yanked it back to life, flooding the area with light only to find nothing but trees standing guardians. Yet something was there. He could feel it, a heartbeat outside of their own, matching their speed, forcing the fight to surge in his veins even harder. "Mark!" Linda shrieked, pointing into the blackness. Ahead of them, shadowy figures glided through the trees, unnaturally fast and flowing. Mark's crew instinctively drew closer. "Run!" he commanded, voice hoarse, plunging into a desperate sprint down the trail. Behind them, the flicker of lanterns started to appear, brightening as it got closer, an ethereal green glow amidst the black. "Are those eyes?" Ella's whimper cut through the cacophony of fear, her small body shaking. "No! Don't look!" Mark shouted, refusing to let doubt poison their escape. The trees seemed to close in around them, roots twisting out like claws hungry for him to stumble, for them to fall. When the voices came, they were sickeningly sweet, whispering promises of safety and warmth. Stay with us," they beckoned, each soft call growing more insistent, wrapped in a deceptive cocoon of familiarity. "No!" Mark yelled, shaking his head violently, willing himself to drown out the seductive tones. They were lies, and lies could kill. As he crashed through the underbrush, limbs scratched at his skin, tearing through his clothes as if the woods themselves were attempting to hold them back, to drag them into the earth. They would become part of the darkness if they stopped. Then, ahead, the trees began to part, opening up to a clearing, a sliver of moonlight spilling forth. Relief flooded Mark for a split second, but as they burst into the clearing, it quickly waned. What they found was a desolate campsite, abandoned, pitch-top tents draped like shrouds around a dirt-streaked fire pit. Charred remains of wood stood against haunting silhouettes, whispering of lives once vibrant, now snuffed out. "Maybe we can hide here," Linda murmured, her voice drifting into the fragile night as she glanced at the campsite's remains. "No!" Mark exclaimed, eyes darting to the shadows closing around them. "We can't stay. They'll find us." But the magic of the woods with its insidious allure wrapped tighter around them, extinguishing that last flicker of hope. The faint sound of laughter, childlike and joyful, dripped from the trees, twisting their minds with a malevolent mirth. It felt wrong, and Mark's skin crawled. Then, the laughter shifted to screams, a cacophony that twisted in the breeze, a sound no parent should ever have to hear. He dropped to his knees, feeling the ground pulse beneath him, a heartbeat echoing in synchronization with the fear thrumming within him. Plunging his hand into his pocket, he felt the comforting weight of his knife, the realization dawning in his mind that this could be a fight for survival. But before he could speak, the trees trembled, leaves rustling like whispers. Suddenly, an undulating mist rolled in, wrapping around their legs like icy fingers, confusion clouding their judgment. A voice rose above it all, dark and deep, a murmur that could curl the blood in your veins. "This is where you belong." Far away, from every corner of the woods, the eyes began to glow. What they thought was their escape had become a trap. Would they be swallowed whole by the past? And as the mist closed in, something shifted in the darkness, and Mark felt the ground beneath him shift. "Get ready," he murmured, knuckles tight around the knife. "This is just the beginning." The mist thickened, swirling around Mark's waist like a predator stalking its prey. He felt the breath of the woods, chilling and pervasive, a reminder of the terror lurking just beyond his view. With every heartbeat, the whispers grew louder, teasing and mocking him. Branches creaked, their crooked limbs framing ghostly figures that seemed to dance just beyond the reach of the flashlight. Linda's voice quivered, almost lost in the clutches of darkened air. Her eyes darted from shadow to shadow, as if searching for salvation among the twisted trees. "Stay close," he barked, the urgency clawing at his throat. With every passing second, the world felt smaller, the forest closing in, suffocating them with anticipation. The fire pit, cold and empty, loomed at the center of the campsite, an artifact of a time long gone. Charred logs whispered of warmth that had once radiated from the flame's safety, perhaps even happiness. Now, all that lingered was a bitter absence. Where did they go? Jake's eyes were wide with disbelief, scanning the surroundings for any signs of life. "There's no way they just left." Mark felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He didn't need the answer. Deep down, they all knew. "Let's check the tents," he urged, pushing through the dense fog that continued to spiral around them. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground itself conspired to weigh them down. As they approached the nearest tent, an oppressive silence fell, stifling their breaths. The canvas was torn, its gaping mouth swallowing darkness. Mark peered inside, his flashlight illuminating scattered belongings: an abandoned backpack, a dirty sleeping bag. His skin crawled. "Nothing here," he said, voice barely a whisper, fear swallowing the bravado he tried to project. "Let's move to the next." But the ground trembled beneath their feet, and an unholy screech erupted from the woods, a sound that felt like nails scraping against bone. It sent prickles of fear racing up Mark's spine, and he stumbled back, clutching the knife. "What was that?" Ella cried, her hands trembling, pale as moonlight. "Just keep going, don't stop," he urged, pushing forward, forcing himself to maintain focus. They had to move, had to survive. They rushed for another tent, desperate to find shelter, to escape the eyes that watched from the darkness, to evade the claws of fate closing in. Inside, they found remnants: torn clothes, muddy shoes, but no bodies. Just loss painted on every creased corner, memories buried beneath layers of dust. Suddenly, a low growl emanated from the tree-line, an echo that shivered through the air. Shadows converged, pulling away from the trees as if summoned by an unseen force, each more horrific than the last. "Run!" Mark shouted, heart hammering against his ribcage. They darted from the tent as the shadows rolled in, their shapes contorting like twisted spirits escaping the underworld. A flurry of motion blurred his vision, Linda slipping, falling into the dark ground, gripping at the soil. "Help me!" Mark lunged towards her, but as he reached for her hand, the mist thickened further, wrapping around her ankles. She screamed, her voice punctuated by terror, and the shadows closed in like a wave engulfing everything. "Mark!" Her eyes widened, rage and horror echoing simultaneously in their depths. He was torn, heart racing, adrenaline surging through him like a wildfire. The knife glinted in his hand, a terrifying reminder that survival would cost him everything. He had to choose. With a burst of willpower, he heaved her closer, pulling her from the clutches of the mist, but the shadows were relentless, gnashing teeth forming from the darkness. Then, as their bodies collided, the world around them turned. The campsite dissolved, reforming into blurred outlines of a different place, the faintest whispers of laughter mingling with terror, of children playing, but it wasn't right. The laughter warped and twisted, merging into chilling screams of the lost. "Mark! We have to," and just as he felt the edges of his own sanity fray beneath the pull of the shadows, a face emerged. From the depths a glimpse of something hauntingly familiar, making his heart race with pure dread. "Come play with us," it hissed, eyes glimmering with the glow of lost souls. As darkness consumed them, hope was snuffed out like a candle in the wind, leaving only the lingering realization that the past had awakened, and they were caught in its cruel embrace. And then there was only silence, save for the pulse of the forest, waiting, always waiting. What had they awakened in the woods? Would they ever break free from the grasp of their own nightmares? The ground shivered beneath Mark, as if the earth responded to the dark whispers surrounding them. He felt the chill gnawing at the back of his neck, creeping up like the icy slithering fingers of the mist. Each breath he took was a battle against the overwhelming dread. It felt as if the very air was a pollutant, contaminated with fear. "Where are we?" Jake's voice trembled, barely escaping his throat. "This isn't right." "They're here somewhere," Mark muttered, trying to steady his racing heart. Panic hadn't just gripped him, it twisted and strangled him. The laughter morphed into sinister giggles that echoed in his mind, teasing the memory of joy and taunting its disappearance. "Listen." Ella grabbed his arm, her grip like iron, her nails digging deeply as if she feared being snatched away. What if they are still? Silence swept through the clearing, a heavy veil that settled over them, weighed down by the specters lurking beyond their sight. Shadows hung in the trees, stretching long fingers that beckoned them closer. His instincts screamed. He realized that behind those shadows were eyes lost, desperate eyes staring back at him, hungering. Then, without warning, a shriek tore through the stillness, more primal than any sound he'd heard before, and more chilling than the growl that had driven them to run. It sliced through the fog. Adrenaline surged through him as he pulled his knife, its blade shimmering like a beacon of hope and dread. "Back!" he shouted, stepping forward to shield his friends. "Stay behind me." "Mark." Linda's voice wavered, almost drowned in hysteria. "What if they're in danger?" "We can't just..." But the words stuck in her throat as a dark figure lunged from the mist, its form barely human with limbs that twisted unnaturally. Mark felt the weight of sheer terror crush him, and he swung his knife at the apparition. The blade passed harmlessly through the entity, like smoke escaping a fire. It let out a warping shriek, retreating into the fog with an echoing laughter that was both childlike and malevolent. "Did you see that?" Jake whispered, voice cracking, eyes wide. "What was that thing?" "It doesn't matter." Mark snapped, desperation tightening his chest. "We have to." A flicker of movement made him turn. In the distance, the flickering light of a lantern brought a sudden spark of hope, cutting through the oppressive dark. Instinctively, he grabbed Ella's hand and began to drag them toward it. "Do you see it?" he shouted, the frantic percussive rhythm of his heart pounding rapidly. "It's a way out." They sprinted toward the light, but the serenity of its glow began to ripple and warp. It flickered and faded like a dying star, replaced by the sound of whispers saying his name over and over, each syllable entwined with a chilling malice. The moment their feet touched the ground beneath the lantern, it extinguished, plunging them back into thick darkness. Dread coiled back around them, squeezing their hearts in a unified rhythm of terror. "Mark! What do we do?" Linda gasped, her eyes wide in terror as the shadows loomed closer, hungry for fear. "We fight!" Mark shouted, the determination rising like fire within him. "We won't give in." But even as he raised his knife, the echo of laughter returned, and from its depths, the haunting chant beckoned forth, "Join us, play with us." The shadows danced closer, their forms shifting between children and grotesque figures, blurring the line between lost innocence and dread. Fear clawed at Mark's throat, choking off his resolve. As the darkness pressed in, suffocating and relentless, a sudden thought pierced through Mark's fog of despair. What if they weren't playing at all? Before he could voice his suspicion, a shape broke away from the darkness, its face unmistakably familiar, eyes wide with an eerie glow, the very image of loss and longing. "Help me," Mark it said, stretching a hand forward, fingertips brushing against the edges of the light. His gut twisted as the realization hit him with all its heavy weight. In those woods, remnants of the lost were alive, beckoning them towards a fate. They would never escape. And in that moment, he knew this wasn't just a nightmare, it was the resurrection of their worst fears. What darkness lingered beyond the light? Would they become part of the whispers forever? Mark's heart raced as he stared at the familiar figure emerging from the darkness. The face twisted with desperation was unmistakable. It was his younger sister, Lily. Panic clawed at him, but he couldn't let her see how much her appearance rattled him. "Lily?" he whispered, his voice barely rising above the whispers swirling around them. "Help me, please." Her voice cracked, and her outstretched hand trembled as if it was fighting against an unseen force. Mark yearned to reach for her, to pull her away from whatever haunted these woods, but a cold grip of dread tightened around his chest. "Don't touch her!" Ella suddenly shouted, the urgency in her tone slicing through the heaviness in the air. "Mark, she's not real." "Shut up!" Mark snapped, rage bubbling beneath his fear. He could feel the others' nervous glances, their doubts ripping at the seams of his resolve. But Lily's torment was real. "I'm scared," she sobbed, the sound echoing in the dense fog, chilling him to the bone. Every part of Mark screamed to trust her, to help her escape whatever trapped her in this nightmare. "No!" Ella insisted, her grip tightening around his arm. "It wants you to believe. It's playing tricks." "And what if it's not?" Mark shouted back, the tension electrifying the air. He felt his mind racing, unraveling the knot of confusion threatening to consume him. Visions of his sister smiling, laughing, alive filled his thoughts, battling the fear that clutched at his gut. The shadows thickened, crawling across the ground toward them, their whispers now rising to a deafening chant. "Join us, you're one of us forever, Mark." Jake's voice was frantic. "We need to go. Now." But what if Lily was trapped? He couldn't leave her, he wouldn't. He took a step forward, adrenaline surging through him again. "I need to know," he gasped, desperation gripping him like a vice as the laughter grew louder, drowning out his own thoughts. "Stop!" Linda shrieked, but it was too late. "Lily!" He reached out, breaking free from the others and lunging toward her, the dark fog swirling like a living entity. As their hands met, an electric jolt surged through him. It felt as though he was touching the very core of the evil that saturated these woods. The moment their skin connected, an icy shock rippled through him, and he felt a veil lift. The laughter ceased, replaced by a haunting silence. For a split second, he saw clarity in Lily's eyes, as if she gazed back from a realm of sorrow. "Help me!" she cried, her voice echoing like a wail of the damned. Mark was plunged into a flood of memories, twisted and dark. He saw scenes flash before him, Lily laughing in their backyard, summer vacations, their last moments together before she disappeared. And then everything collapsed into an abyss as shadows enveloped him, twisting reality with every heartbeat. He could feel the shadows pulling him away, tearing him from the warmth of her grasp. "Mark!" The voices of his friends screamed, their panic anchoring him in the moment. Just as darkness threatened to pull him in entirely, he fought against it. He pushed everything he had into breaking free. The shadows recoiled, hissing like a chorus of serpents. But Lily's eyes shone brighter, desperate and pleading. "Please don't leave me." But a sudden burst of blinding light exploded in the clearing. It broke the fog, scattering the shadows and illuminating the twisted faces lurking just beyond the chaos. Mark struggled to get to Lily. They were so close and yet so far. He reached again, his heart pounding, the space between them an eternity. "Mark, we have to go." Linda's scream consumed him. Every ounce of logic screamed at him to flee. But another part, the raw, primal instinct buried deep within him, urged him to keep reaching. Then he realized, this was not just about him. It was about all of them. As the shadows swirled angrily, hunger seeping from the mouths of the lost, Mark made his decision. "We're getting her back," he shouted, determination burning like a wildfire. But before he could act, a chilling, bone-shaking laughter erupted, wrapping tightly around them. "Join us or perish!" The air crackled with malice as the darkness surged forward, ready to swallow them whole. What will they choose? Fight or accept the darkness? And who will pay the price? The shadows surged, a thick wave of darkness crashing against them as Mark's resolve hardening. "No! We're not leaving her." His voice cut through the oppressive fog, fueled by a desperate courage. But doubt flickered in his friend's eyes, fear fighting against the flicker of hope that had ignited in him. "Mark, we can't stay!" Jake shouted again, his voice strained, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting the very earth to swallow them whole. Lily's eyes widened, desperation growing like thorny vines around their hearts. "Help me, Mark!" she cried, and though the fear in his chest screamed for him to run, he felt his feet plant on the ground. Something unyielding anchored him as the shadows writhed closer, their whispers a menacing symphony of despair. "Mark!" Ella reached out, panic lacing her words. "We won't survive this if we don't leave now." It was too late to reason. The laughter erupted again, venomous and mocking, echoing in his mind. "Join us!" Embrace the darkness. It felt thicker now, suffocating almost, but Mark couldn't look away from Lily's trembling figure. With a sudden surge of resolve, he shouted at the top of his lungs, "I'll always be there for you, Lily." His words shattered the silence lingering in the air, and it felt like his declaration hung above them like a shield, albeit a fragile one. In that moment, something flickered in the shadows, a ripple of anger. The faces flickering behind the darkness twisted into cruel sneers, revealing gnarled teeth. They wanted to snatch his sister back, to leave him impotent in the face of their hunger. Panic welled in his chest, hot and vicious. "Fight it, Lily!" he shouted again, raising his arms, defiance consuming him. "You don't belong to this place." The shadows recoiled momentarily, but then surged again with renewed intensity, hissing, swirling. The faces leered closer, and Mark could see tears glistening in Lily's eyes, something else buried deep within them, something older and more sinister than he imagined. "Mark!" Linda's voice broke through the chaos. "The light. We need to," but another round of laughter drowned her out. It was a cacophony, a sound both beautiful and horrific. He could feel his heartbeat thudding raggedly in time with the sinister rhythm of the night. It was a reminder of his precarious humanity, and the darkness hungered to take that from him. "Let go of me!" Lily screamed, her voice shattering the binding circle of despair. For the first time, it felt like she was fighting back. The shadows hesitated. Just for a heartbeat, the swirling mass faltered, allowing light to seep into the edges. Mark seized the moment, bolting forward, trying to bridge the widening chasm between them. "I'm here. I'll pull you back." But then they surged again, the darkness boiling like a pot over the fire, consuming everything. The laughter resumed, louder and angrier, echoing in every crevice of his mind. It promised a world without pain, without fear, yet deep down he knew it was a lie. "Now! Together!" Linda shouted, entwining her fingers with Jake's. They all lunged forward, arms outstretched. "Save her! We can do this!" Ella shouted, falling into place beside them, her eyes tight with focused fear. Lily's face transformed, a flicker of defiance igniting within her. "Mark! Hold on!" With one final push of collective will, the group became a force, a living entity hurtling toward Lily. And as they neared, Mark saw the smile fading and fear tightening like a vice around her throat. The shadows screamed, retreating but gathering strength for one last assault. This wasn't just a fight for Lily. It was life or death, a reckoning in the dark. Together, they reached across that haunting divide, hands brushing against the haze, fighting to pull her back from the edge of oblivion. But suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The reality they clung to began to crack, fissures spreading like veins in a leaf. Mark! They all shouted, voices mingling with the dark, powerful laughter that filled the air. Hold on! Hold on! Could they pull her back? The abyss gaped wide at their feet, ready to consume anyone who faltered. Then the laughter shifted, turning animalistic, and a voice boomed chillingly through the chaos, "Not one will escape unscathed." In that breathless moment, everything hung suspended in the air like an unfinished thought. What if they weren't strong enough? What if the darkness sought not just to take Lily but all of them? Would they surrender to the abyss, or stand united against the encroaching terror? The earth shuddered, and Mark felt it deep in his bones. A heart-thumping dread wrapped around him like a vice, fueled by the fear that clawed its way back into his mind. He dug his heels into the dirt, each heartbeat echoed like a countdown to terror. "Mark! We need to act." Jake's voice was strained, barely above a whisper now, fear clawing at his throat. The shadows coiled tighter, laughing in a language Mark didn't know. It was a sound that whipped around them like the wind, tugging at more than just their sanity. It seeped into their souls, creeping along their nerves, and with each passing second, hope felt like a fading relic. "Don't let go," Ella urged, her face pale, and panic like ice in her veins. The terror in her eyes mirrored his own. But behind them, the void of darkness spread out like a hungry maw, eager to consume. "You're so close, yet so far," it seemed to taunt, slithering closer with a chilling intimacy. "Lily, fight it!" Mark shouted again, his voice ringing through the tumult like a desperate prayer against the storm. He dared to hope, to visualize Lily standing free from the grasping shadows. Would it make a difference? The shadows writhed and howled, distorting into a swirling chaos, threatening to swallow them whole. He felt the grip of Ella and Linda, their hands desperately trying to keep him tethered, their strength unyielding, but he feared it wasn't enough. Each second stretched unbearably. Time felt fractured, as if the stakes fluttered wildly like a moth trapped in a storm. He met Lily's eye, desperately searching for a spark of recognition, a flicker of the sister he had known all his life. But the shadows clung to her, their tendrils twisting around her like serpents, and a part of her face seemed hidden behind a dark veil, something horrible dwelling there. "Please!" Mark cried out, his heart racing and sweat trickling down his back. "You have to come back." "Mark," Lily whispered, her voice a haunting melody wrapped around despair. "Help me. Please." The darkness howled in fury, shrieking as if offended by her plea. In a heartbeat, it lunged forward, surrounding them, striking like a viper, fierce and ravenous. The air turned frigid, each breath feeling like shards of ice railing against their lungs. Mark gasped, the chill gnawing at his spirit. "Keep pulling." Linda screamed, the sound raw, infused with adrenaline. But then, as if answering the command of the darkness, the ground shook again, more violently this time. Mark's vision blurred, panic creeping along his spine. "No, no, no. Stay strong." Jake shouted, squeezing Mark's hand harder, grounding them in their growing tumult. Suddenly the shadows fell back, as if repelled for just a moment. Mark's stomach lurched as a chilling realization washed over him. The tendrils that gripped Lily were fading, like the final rays of sunset swallowed by night. But doubt gnawed at him. What if it wasn't enough? His heart thundered in response, every ounce of energy straining toward her. "Run! We have to run!" At that command, the darkness swelled around, rekindling with a vengeance. Mark felt cold, hard tendrils snake around his ankles, urging him to surrender. They pulled him down, promising relief if he only let go. In a moment of sheer desperation, he saw at the flicker of light behind Lily's eyes, a small glimmer trapped within the drowning shadows. It could be enough or just a cruel mirage. "Hold on. Don't lose yourself," he yelled, desperate to anchor her back to life. But as he surged forward, a deafening crack echoed around them, the ground fracturing like glass underfoot. It hissed, a dangerous labyrinth overflowing with a deep, pulsating darkness, and sent fear spiraling through him. Together, Linda urged, scrambling closer. With everything we have. But in that moment of frantic unity, it felt as if something unseen touched their minds, whispering doubts, unspooling their hope strand by strand. You can never win, you will always lose. The voice slithered through the cracks, like death itself laughing at them. A scream cut through the darkness, sharp and filled with pain. It came from Lily, a sound that echoed the terror they all felt. Mark! Help me! But what if it was too late? What if this was all a trap, and the darkness would snatch them all into the depths? As he reached out for Lily with everything inside him, a new realization struck him. What did the shadows want truly? Was it just Lily, or was it feeding on them all? The terrifying possibilities loomed larger, and as he pulled against the tide, he knew the battle had only just begun. Would they be consumed together, or could they finally find a way to conquer the storm? The air thickened, charged with an electric tension that felt alive, like a beast stalking its prey. Shadows swirled around them, dark fingers curling through the air, seeking, grasping, whispering promises of despair. Mark's heart raced as he fought against the encroaching nightmare, every instinct screaming at him to flee, yet he couldn't abandon Lily to the shadows. Hold on! He shouted, his voice faltering as the weight of fear bore down upon him. An anguished cry, a mixture of terror and desperation, echoed from Lily. They're coming for me! It sliced through him, deeper than any blade could. Mark! Her words were an urgent alarm, a signal that made the pit of his stomach twist with an unshakable dread. The shadows conspired, crawling closer, hungry and relentless. Mark could sense their vile hunger for Lily, like vultures anticipating a feast. Lily! Focus on me! He commanded, unwilling to let her slip beyond reach. He squeezed Ella and Jake's hands tighter, a tether made of flesh and sweat, unwilling to let even an inch separate them. A flash of light, a thin wisp of silver energy flickered behind Lily's eyes, a sliver of the person they knew battling against the consuming darkness. Keep fighting it! Jake urged, desperation tinging his words with an edge that made them sound more like an order. But the shadows shrieked, a dissonant choir rising in wrath, drowning out their pleas. You cannot save her! It roared, the sound vibrating like a distant thunderclap, shaking the ground beneath them. With a thunderous crack, the earth splintered again, fissures snaking toward them, a violent reminder that time dwindled. Mark stood on the brink of a vortex, a gaping maw waiting to swallow them whole. Run! Linda shouted again through frenzied breaths. But where could they run when the very earth beneath them was unraveled? Mark hesitated just a moment too long, glancing back toward Lily, who was now almost lost to the shadows. The flicker in her eyes dimmed. Mark, please, I'm scared. That single word tore through him. It reverberated in his bones, a haunting echo of innocence trapped within the void. Fear was a disease, and he could feel it spreading through their group, coiling around their hearts like a constrictor. Stay with me. Fight! He yelled, ready to plunge into the abyss if it meant freeing her. But the uncertainty clawed at him. Could he bring her back? The realization hit him like a sledgehammer. This wasn't just about Lily anymore. The shadows were feeding on their fear, each scream and plea adding fuel to their dark hunger. They want us all! He shouted, panic racing through his veins, adrenaline sparking wild thoughts. What if turning their backs was the only way to save themselves? But could any of them live with that betrayal? Mark! Ella's voice cracked as she was nearly pulled into the swirling darkness. We can't give up on her. Clenching his jaw, Mark forced himself to confront the unwelcome truth. They were being singularly picked apart, their hope fracturing under pressure. We have to break this. Together. With a steely resolve, he reached out for Lily again, but the shadows surged, enveloping her in a suffocating embrace. The flicker of light faded, completely eclipsed. A new scream erupted, an ear-piercing sound that made his stomach churn. No! No! He roared, nearly losing his footing as the ground pulsed violently again. He could sense defeat creeping in, clawing at his spirit, whispering poison-laced promises. We don't have time to give in. In that moment, a spark ignited within him, a flicker of anger and determination mixed with reckless abandon. He could not let the darkness win, not today. Then, the ground beneath him jolted, splitting apart and revealing a void that pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Mark's breath caught in his throat. What lay beneath? He felt the shadow's grip grow stronger, pulling him toward that chasm, but something within whispered of hidden power, of ancient secrets buried in the abyss. Mark! Lily's voice faintly broke through the chaos, a thread of desperation linked to the core of his being. In that fleeting moment, he realized what they truly needed. Not just to fight the darkness, but to confront it with something deeper. Something they had buried in themselves, perhaps even in fear. The shadows thrashed around him, ready to claim their prize, and Mark could feel the ground tremble dangerously. Could they unleash whatever lay hidden in the depths? Was hope enough to drown back the shadows? The answer hovered tantalizingly close, but the darkness loomed larger, ready to swallow them all whole. Could he make that leap of faith, or would he just be another lost soul trapped in the shadow's embrace? The ground trembled violently beneath them, a tumultuous roar echoing through the forest. The shadows writhed like serpents, hungry and relentless. Mark fought against the darkness wrapping around him, an insidious grip threatening to claim them all. The air was thick with dread, palpable and cold. Mark, think about Lily. Linda shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. We can't let her go. Reaching deep inside, he felt the urgency pulse through him. I know. We have to be stronger. We can't give in to fear. He was a man on the brink, tethered only by the shared strength of family, of love. In that moment, he understood. Love was a beacon, a flame burning brightly amid the encroaching dark. Ella. Jake. Linda. Listen. His voice was firm, cutting through the howling shadows. We have to focus on each other. We're stronger together. They joined hands, a living link against the chaos. Mark closed his eyes, drawing on every ounce of their bond, every moment they had shared. We're not just trying to save Lily, we're fighting for all of us. Lily. We're here. You're not alone. Ella cried, tears streaming down her face but her voice steady. In response, the shadows recoiled slightly, hissing as if stung. Something flickered within the veil, but it was too quick to identify. Fight back. Lily, fight. Jake encouraged, the tremor in his voice like a drumbeat rallying them. They needed her will, her strength. Suddenly, they heard Lily's voice cut through the chaos, racked with pain but resolute. Mark. I won't give up. I'm fighting. The shadows shrieked at this confession, their laughter turning to a furious roar. Mark felt the ground shift beneath him, battling against the swing of darkness. They could feel the power, the shared love burning brighter as they found strength in the storm. Together. Mark shouted again, a symphony of voices rising, each word was a weapon, striking back against the cold grip of fear. We are the light. We want to be your prey. The shadows faltered. For the first time, Mark saw the glimpse of bright determination in Lily's hazel eyes. A small flicker of hope danced against the oppressive dark, and something shifted deep within the shadows. What are you fighting for? You belong here. They jeered, but their voices quaked now with uncertainty. No. Mark shouted back, heart pounding with ferocity. We belong together, and together we want to be silenced. The air crackled with energy as the ring of light around them grew, chopping through the dark. And with every chant of love, every declaration of their bond, the tendrils of the shadows withdrew, shrieking in anger. Let go, Mark. Lily cried, determination lighting up her features. You're so close. Please. He could feel her not just as his sister but as a part of himself. With a deep breath, he plunged through the darkness, arms stretching toward her. This ends now. As their hands grasped tight, a wave of warmth surged through him, an energy stronger than anything fear could wield. The shadows let loose a furious howl, relentless in their attack, but Mark's heart surged, fueled by love and strength. In that moment, everything swirled into brilliance, a blinding light erupting from their joined hands, unraveling the shadows. It illuminated the woods like dawn breaking, a glowing orb of hope against despair. Together they shouted, voices uniting, weaving their strength as the light pushed against the consuming darkness. The shadows screamed, a mournful wail cascading through the trees as they swept back, unable to withstand the purity of their bond. Mark felt a rush of renewed energy, as if every moment they spent together surged through their hearts, binding them closer than ever. Lily. Let go. He urged. The shadows spiraled, shrieking in vengeance as everything melded into a kaleidoscope of colors. Mark felt the restrained power rippling through him, finally realizing they could conquer the past if they stood together. With one final push, the shadows dissipated into nothingness, leaving behind echoes of their cries. The forest sighed, returning to stillness, as dawn painted the sky with hues of brilliant gold and pink. Panting, Mark pulled Lily into his arms, relief crashing over him in waves. We did it, you're safe. Tears pooled in her eyes, shimmering like stars. I fought, Mark, I fought for us. Ella and Jake rushed to their side, locking arms around each other. We all fought together, Linda murmured, face streaked with tears, a mix of joy and exhaustion. As they stood together beneath the rising sun, breathing in the fresh air that felt new again, they shared a glance filled with understanding. They had conquered the dark, fractured fears that haunted them. Let us go home, Mark whispered, feeling the warmth of their bond, powerful and unyielding. And for the first time, it felt like the warmth of hope would guide them forward. They took a step, then another, leaving the tangled woods behind. Together, they echoed, hearts lightened by the weight of what they had overcome. As the Johnson family walked hand in hand toward the dawn, freedom blossomed in the air around them, a testament to their indomitable spirit forever intertwined. But as they departed, a whisper lingered in the wind, waiting to be heard, a gentle reminder of the darkness they had faced, daring them to remember it always. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this pulse-pounding ending. In addition, you must instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. True fans know the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.